Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. For returning listeners, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, we're really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. We're very fortunate today. We have another guest on our podcast, and we're just going to have a conversation about kind of his life and his experiences and the things that have helped him be successful, what he's learned from both the positives and the negatives. And as we know on our podcast, we talk a lot about managing the negative things that happen in our life, and how we respond to those things is 90% of how most successful people wind up successful. Joining us today from the Dallas, Texas area is Nathan McQuillan. Nathan and I, we found Nathan on Instagram, and we had a great conversation to get to know each other a little bit last week. So I'm super excited to bring him onto the podcast because he's got some different background than a lot of the guests that we've had on previously. Not only is he a college graduate, but he has kind of made his way in the trades. Started off doing flat work, which is what most people in the trades refer to as concrete and asphalt type stuff, and has built his career into being a certified construction manager and a very unique position within the construction industry. I have experience with someone that does what Nathan did on the projects we worked on recently in Chicago. And I can tell you it's not an easy job because the guy that did it for us in Chicago earned his money. I can tell you that. Without further ado, we would like to welcome Nathan to the Salty Ginger Talk podcast. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So super excited to have you on, like we talked about. So let's just jump right into it. I kind of walked through the broad strokes of your background, but if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give a brief history of, like, how you made your way in the world as you graduated high school and kind of worked your way up to where you're at now, and then we can dive into more particulars after that.
Sure. It all started. Let me go back and correct you a little bit. I do not have a college degree. I did go to college,
Oh,
but I
my
did not.
apologies.
No, it's okay. I think it's important, especially this day and age, that I just want to set the record straight because I was able to do it without whatever it is, right? I was able to do what I plan to do without a college degree. That's not the case for everybody, I understand, but for me, it made the most sense. I started out in the Austin, Texas areas where I'm originally from. I'm a sixth generation Austinite. That in certain circles gets you a frown, gets you a cheer. It's all the spectrum is. It's a big transplant town now. So there's been people move in from all over the globe, much less the country. A lot of Silicon Valley, a lot of tech. Right? But I grew up in the antique business, in the furniture business, and I'm one of six, and about the middle of the pack, and just like I said, kind of grew up in the family owned business, so it wasn't a far jump to ultimately go into business for myself. When I went off to school, I did get a football scholarship. The college I went to was Tarleton State, a little bitty Stephenville, Texas, little bitty spot in the road, but they are coming along. They dropped a division, cut all of our scholarships. I was looking at paying for college at that point, and I said, well, at the time, I thought it made more sense to just go back to work, and so I did. Got married. Been married now for 32 years. We've got three girls. The oldest is about to turn 30 this weekend. We get to go visit her. The middle is 24, and the youngest is 17, but just about to graduate high school. The three girls have kept me busy and kept my wife and I pushing the proverbial ball up the hill. But as far as just background and where I came from, like I said, the furniture business doesn't translate much into what I do today. But I came along and did everything under the sun. I whether good, bad, or indifferent, I've had more jobs and more types of jobs, mostly sales positions, more than I care to mention. But because I didn't go to college, I felt it necessary to learn what I could, take that, parlay that into the next job. And so my first role was I never left a job until I had a job. And the second rule is it was always for more money or more experience or more knowledge. And so that served me well, served me to a place where I started, in the ditch where I was working as a residential plumber for a group my brother had got me involved with, and I started looking down the street, and the houses that we were building weren't small, but they were one after another. And I noticed something pretty interesting. I kept looking down the street, and that's a brand new house, and that guy's at home in the middle of the afternoon. He's got a boat, brand new boat, and he's got a brand new pickup. I gotta go find out what in the world this guy's doing at home at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so I did. I walked down there and asked the guy. He said he's a project manager for a general contractor. Now, granted, it was a commercial project manager for commercial construction, and I was doing residential plumbing. And so to make that leap, I had to have somebody, give me a chance, give me an opportunity. The biggest thing for me was the want to. And I think that early on in my career, early on in life, people, I'd heard, look, I can teach you things, but you're going to have the want to, and the desire. So what is it that you want to do was the question I kept hearing, and I had no clue. And I kept looking and I kept looking, and I found this guy down the street when I was plumbing, and he said, yeah, I'm a project manager. We talked a little bit about it, but that was it. He didn't really give me much help, but that stuck with me. And I had a friend that was in that business, and uh, providentially, divine, whatever you want to call it. In my mind, it was God pushing me into a direction that ultimately resulted in where I'm at today. And so, like you mentioned, I grew, that was an opportunity to work for a concrete subcontractor. They were rather large in the commercial industry and commercial side of things, and it gave me an opportunity to understand, read, and look at plans, right? That was the step one for me, was to just get my head around how to read a set of plans, how to, manage a project from very, very fundamentals. And so I just poured myself into it. And I, like my coach used to say, he said, if you're gonna screw up full speed. Just get in there and make something happen. Get in there and bang around if need be. If you're not real sure what to do, just keep moving. And that was sort of me in the early days. And then I got an opportunity to work for a general contractor. And that's not necessarily the progression that everyone thinks, but for me, that made sense. I thought, well, if I understood what the subs were doing and understood that portion of work, the next step would be to gather a concept of what it looks like to do and manage all of those subcontractors. And that's what a general contractor does. So I got the opportunity to work on that side of things. And then once I understood to the best of my abilities. They understood the big picture of general contracting. And what I meant by that, I guess, let me back up and say, before moving to the next phase in my mind, that was just organically how it wasn't a plan. I certainly didn't plan it that way, but it seemed to make sense to me that the next progression would be to be not just a project manager for one trade, but for a project manager for all the trades. And given that opportunity, I just sunk my teeth into it, and I said if I could understand how to buy and sell the services, then that would mean I could go and find more work, right? And I would be not just able to do the work, but get the work. And that, from my sales experience, was paramount. I felt like I could add another layer of, how should I say, another layer of value to the next group. And so I had the opportunity to work for a GC that was a service to disabled vet owned company, which I proudly was able to serve and loved those guys, and they gave me a great experience. We moved that on into doing larger work uh, for the VA and for military bases all over the globe. Really gave me some exposure in contracting and understand systematically how those all come together in the construction world, and then ultimately had the opportunity to move from the GC side of things to the design side. And then I said, well, if I knew how to put a set of plans together, if I at least understood how architecture works and planning and programming the projects work, then again, I could add more value to my, feather in my cap, if you will, or more value to the next group. And for the last 10 or so years, that's 7 or 8 years, that's what I've been doing. That's what I've, and then I said, well, if I could do this work for directly for the owner, that makes really all of the collective experience that I had at each sort of stakeholder the most valuable to the end user. And that guy, or girl would reach out. I could come alongside them and be a consultant, work and really have control over my own destiny, and understand that I could still bring value to my constituents, or what do you call them, stakeholders, as far as a subcontractor and general contractor, to where I knew their pain points. I knew where they were struggling. I also knew how they could make money, what it took for them to make a successful project, and where the areas where they were struggling, and help them prop that, when I say prop that tent pole up on the big circus, right? And try to help and add value to them. And when I'm helpful to others, I feel like that's helpful to the big picture. So I guess the last few years have been the most eventful, I guess, with politics and the things that are happening in the world, somewhat affect projects getting started and that sort of thing. But for the most part, it's been very, very productive and very lucrative for me to be on this side of things. And so I've teamed with architects and designers and construction program managers, and done different types of projects, and helped from everything from, like you said, a residential plumbing project, all the way to a large data center, or a large hospital, a large uh, uh, multifamily project, cold storage facilities. Recently did a brewery here down the road from us, and that was fun. But I get an opportunity to work with a number of different types of people. Every project has, somewhere between 100 and 175, 200 people that touch that project. And so I try to make every introduction, and everyone that is a part of those projects, I try to personally reach out and create a relationship. You never know where that next project's going to be, who that's going to be with, and gathering a handful of names and numbers that you can rely on, that you've had good experiences with, moving to the next project always makes a big difference. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot to dig into there, or a lot to discuss. I am a Christian. I am a father and a husband, and I try to live my life, to glorify Him in every way I can. And so part of that journey and walk is certainly weight, a large weight of my path. I think I've been able to lean on Him in the valleys, and rejoice on the high sides as well. So that's, like I said, I feel like that's probably me in a nutshell. I don't know. There's like uh, where you want to take it from here, but
So I had so many questions. I was taking notes, so I didn't I didn't miss them all, because when you think about that 30 plus year span, and think about how many different lives and how many different kind of inflection points that you've had in your life, I just find it so interesting, how people deal with change and deal with, like your life doesn't stay the same, right? I say it jokingly, but I wish it was a joke, but it's not. It's too bad you didn't know me when I was 20 years old, because I was the smartest guy in the world when I was 20 years old. I knew everything,
sure,
and you didn't have to ask me. I would tell you that I knew everything. That's how smart and confident I was.
sure.
And I've gotten a lot dumber over the years, because it turns out I don't know nothing. And
Isn't it
there's
something?
tons of people out there that know so much more than me. And most of them are willing to help you if you'll ask them a couple questions and
That's
shut your
it.
mouth, you know?
Yes,
And you
sir.
talked about a lot of that. So let's start with football. What position did you play in football?
I was an offensive lineman, a tight end, and a defensive end.
Okay. So I'm a huge believer that team sports gives you all of the tools that you need to be successful in your adult life if you're able to participate in team sports. So I'm wondering if you might be able to talk a little about some of the lessons you took from the gridiron and the daily doubles and the weight room and all the work that goes into being a football player and how those things prepared you for some of the challenges you face in your life. Because I'd be shocked if you didn't lean on some of that football training based on the background you just described.
100%. Um, so the starting college experience for me, being one of six, I had an older brother, and two younger brothers, and two sisters, and so uh, sports were a big part of our lives. But I had a single mom. Why do I mention that? Well, for me, I had for me and my brothers, we were in competition. We call Irish twins. We're about 18 months apart, and
Yeah.
we
I've got Irish twin nephews. I know exactly what you're talking about.
know the deal. And
They're 11
so,
months apart. They didn't waste any time.
wow, yeah. So, absolutely, athletics. In fact, I'll start off with this. One of my rules with the girls, I had three rules. I said, before you get married, you need to finish college, obviously finish school, visit one other country, play an instrument, and every single one during high school, I said, you got to plug in somewhere. And I think what you're talking about is the camaraderie, the rules of life that translate from really any sport, particularly with football. I never broke any bones. I never I say my experiences with football were not becoming a college scholarship athlete was so low on my radar. I just didn't think I was ever gonna. I wouldn't didn't have any plans to go to school. I didn't even think I was good enough to go play college ball. So I never even gave it another thought. My teammates are the ones responsible for pulling me aside and saying, hey, get in the truck, we're going,
Mm.
and that's what happened. So I've got several teammates that snatched me up and that said, "Let's go." I ended up um, going and getting an opportunity to be part of the team. I didn't play. I left school when they dropped scholarships, and I came back. I say I didn't play. I mean, we did two a days, like you said, to get to do all the hard stuff. We didn't really get to. I didn't wasn't there long enough to play in the game, and so I left school and I came home. Got married, had a child, got divorced from the same woman, and went back to school on a rodeo scholarship. So the translation for me on sports, obviously the cliche ones, but for me it was about just not giving up, knowing that you have the ability and knowing that you like my coach used to say, I wasn't, that's why they put me on the line. I kind of got in the way. I'm only about 6'4", 220 or 30 pounds at that time, about 290 now. But I could just get in the way. I was pretty small. That was pretty big. That's small today, but that was pretty big in my
Yeah.
day. It wasn't very many people over 6 foot, and if you broke 100, 200 pounds, you were sort of a freak of nature. I was quick. I ran a 4.640 at that
Wow.
size.
Yeah.
So I think I really enjoyed playing, but and I wasn't really like a major force on the team or anything like that. Having the opportunity to go and play even for a small school was an honor in my book. But my rodeo career, that stint between college football and rodeo, provided debauchery and just partying and drinking, and it taught me everything not to do during that
Mm.
time. It was a dark time for me. My wife and I, like I said, had a daughter on the ground, and we busted up, just being young and not really understanding what marriage is really all about. And so so college rodeo gave me an outlet to kind of sow those oats that I didn't do that in college and or do that during the time at Tarleton. But it was it was a dark time for me, but I learned a lot of lessons of all the things not to do. It's a wonder, and this is why I thank God every day that you know I there's could have been many a ditches I would have woke up in or died in or car wrecks or the drinking and the driving, and just like I said, those days you didn't have cameras and Instagram and all of the things that but you had all the same uh temptations, I guess. And so I attribute those times in my life as somebody was in control because I was out of control. I mean, I needed supervision on a constant basis,
Mm.
and so it was. But yeah, athletics. There's no doubt. Team sports where you're forced to make decisions. You're forced to make friends. You're forced to make friends with people that come from a different background, different cultures, different upbringings. I really cherish those times and those lessons that were learned with different folks from different walks of life, rich and poor, black and white, big and tall, in every walk of life. If you're paying attention, you'll learn something, right? It's like you said earlier that we thought we knew everything until we realized we don't know a thing. You got to be unwise to become wise, right? Uh,
Yep. Yep.
so
Hey,
I,
look, the one, I just appreciate you being so candid about that because it's something we talk about on our podcast a lot. And I try to look, I've screwed up a lot of stuff in my life and I try to be candid about it because I've been successful at stuff in my life too. And I played Division 1 baseball and people look at that, I had a chance to play professional baseball and it seems glamorous and it
yeah,
seems cool. It seems like some lofty, it's not. It's a lot of work, like you described. And I'll tell you, I learned way more from giving up home runs in the bottom of the ninth than I ever did from striking the last guy out and having
yeah,
my teammates mob me on the mound. And I just
yeah,
appreciate your candidness about that because I think it's such a valuable lesson for people to learn, and it shows. And I do want to get into your faith a little bit later on, but I think it shows both a maturity and a willingness to learn from mistakes that I think young people in particular, the sooner they can adopt that in their life, the better off they're going to be. Like none of us have this figured out. We're all still, I'm 53 and I'm still trying to figure a lot of stuff out. Like I'd love to tell you I got it all whipped, but I do not. And
sure,
just your willingness to share all that, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the
sure,
candidness. So
absolutely. Yeah, I think if you're able to part of that want to, but if you're able to learn from mistakes, I watched the tail end of the Masters, was that yesterday, I guess, and one of the things I noticed the biggest takeaway for me, and I play golf, so I was paying attention. These guys, all of them, Justin Rose said it when they interviewed him. Of course, Roy said it when they were interviewing him, and that is that their comeback, right? They hit a shot, OB, they shanked something, and it cost them dearly. Uh, but they are all proud of the comeback. They're all proud of how they reacted to the mistake, which I thought was a huge life lesson. And who knows how millions of people were watching. I'm not sure how many people caught that or not. Not that I'm special, but I could certainly recognize when it's how you react in life to the certain adversity that comes our ways, and uh, what you gain from it. And the biggest one is hearing people, you only fail if you quit, right? And that's what I think these guys were trying to say is they were able to continue moving forward, keep their composure, breathe in and out, in and out, and just do the next best thing, take the next best step, right? So yeah, that was a pretty cool little deal there that I learned just yesterday. So
I watched the tournament too, and it's funny because I took away the same thing. Like it was so funny to me how the announcers in particular were willing to write a guy off when he hit a bad shot. And like you're not, nobody's perfect. Like it's gonna happen. Um, what do you just
Yeah.
quit? You walk off the course, you grab your sticks and go to the parking lot and go home, or like, what do you think
Yeah.
he was going to do? Like, these are the best guys in the world. You have to have some perseverance when adversity hits, and
Well,
like you
well,
just
look what
described.
happened. Yeah, look what happened with Justin Rose. I mean, he kept practicing on the off chance that there would be a playoff. And look at what happened. He stayed faithful. And I like what he said. He goes, I was planning on being the bad guy. I don't know how many people I didn't follow it. I don't follow golf so much that I knew that Roy was on his 11th year to do that. But I thought it was interesting how Justin was continuing to practice, knowing that it's possible. There's on the off chance. And by the way, did no one see Patrick Reed, slam dunk one into the cup?
That was crazy.
It went nuts, and they didn't even cover it. But once it was like, oh yeah, that happened. It happens. That's nuts. I just couldn't believe it. So anyway, yeah. So no, sorry. Back to yeah, lessons learned and managing expectations and being able to just take that next best step. That was my takeaway. I
Yeah.
interrupted your takeaway.
No,
Yeah.
no, I love that. That's exactly what I noticed as well was like even DeChambeau, DeChambeau had a very disappointing day yesterday. And all he said was, I learned.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
learned.
that's who started off. I forgot to mention it. He's the one that started it off, right? With his, and that's I think the question she asked was, "What was your takeaway?" And it's like, look, I learn every time I come out here, and a lot of people say that that's what you learn at the Masters. You're learning, right?
Yeah.
So all these guys have
But
got it mostly figured out. So
I say a lot, experience is something you get right after you need it. And I've gotten a ton of experience in my
yeah,
life, so that's what
yeah,
we try to talk about on the podcast is life's going to kick you in the teeth every once in a while. And it's how you react to that that either makes you successful or unsuccessful. And
absolutely.
we try not to, and it's hard. We try not to talk in terms of success or failure. We talk about outcomes, right? You take actions and there's an outcome to your actions. If you like that outcome, keep taking the same actions. If you
Right.
don't like the outcome, take different actions. Which leads me to you had talked about walking down the street and saying, "Hey, there's this guy that's pretty successful. We're all building these big houses. He's got a boat in his driveway and he's home at 2 in the afternoon. What's going on?" And you related that to sales. One of the things we talk about a lot is you've got to be willing to to have cold conversations. And was hoping you could talk a little bit about it. Sounds like you've done that over and over and over again in your career, and it has
Yeah.
led you to really good places. I bet it hasn't always led you to really good places, but there have been times that it has led you to really good places. Talk a little bit about how that's played an impact in like where you've gotten to in your life.
100%. No, you've heard people say it time and time again. The answer is always no if you unless you ask. And that's on every T-shirt and bumper sticker should be. It's always going to be no if you don't ask. I've been accused of never meeting a stranger. I certainly don't have a problem talking to anybody really about anything, and I find it interesting and certainly something that's decaying in our culture, and that's everyone's on their phone or everyone's distracted, and I really want to stress this, and I think the biggest thing from a culture fight that we have is the personal connection and being able to walk up to people, walk up to girls, or you got to be able to sell yourself. I sold cars. People always give car guys a hard time. I loved the car business. I had great friends in the car business. I'm a big Toyota fan, and I sold Toyotas. I believed in the product. It made it pretty easy to sell, but then it becomes a numbers game, right? If you're talking sales as far as a career goes, and what I learned there was you got to go through the no's before you get a yes, and now it's how many no's do you have to go through before you get the yes? Well, there's a number there, and you just have to go find it, and it's fine. No's okay. No's an answer. And no can get the tally going to your yes. And when you realize that's another guy I met in the car business was a door-to-door salesman. vacuum cleaners or magazine subscriptions. It was one of, and he just went on and on and on about how it was pretty almost scientific that it was like 27 no's equal to yes. And
Mm.
so now he could back into that and say, whether you're selling real estate or selling cars or selling magazine subscriptions, there is a way to find that number out, and it's how many no's to a yes. The fear of man, back to my faith, is what stops us. What are you concerned about what other people think? And I'm a victim for sure. I struggle with that every single day, and it has to. You have to, I guess, understand the consequences of not. So if you're not going to ask, what they can't eat you. That's another one. I love that one. You know, what are they going to do to you, right? A no, no's an answer, and it's okay to get a no. I think so many people are so afraid to get the no, um, that they never will see a yes, and that's a sad state of affairs. So I for sure that was like step number one is you gotta it's a numbers game, and you got to go through it, asking for help. I'm man, I'm the world's worst. And my one of my other biggest problems is I have a hard time saying no. So I overcommit, or I'll say yes to things that maybe I'll grumble about later. Like, I don't have to help this guy move. Are you kidding me? But sure enough, I'm backing my truck up, and here we go. And nowadays, I can start complaining about a bad back or something, and that usually gets me out of it. So, but yeah, it's having that consistent mindset of just what's the next best step, right? And I forgot what I was mentioning there, but we were talking about uh, we were talking about no's, and where was I headed there? Help me.
No, we were talking about like your willingness to have those
Yeah,
conversations, knowing like
yeah,
it led you, like it's gotten you good things as much as you've gotten the door slammed in your face. It sounds like.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure. And so by not concerning myself with what are they going to think about me? Or, what if? And it's like I said, they can't eat you. So what's the worst that can happen is they'll tell you no. And if you can get past the fact that someone's going to tell you no, think about all the things that are possible. And that was usually what made it easy to go and find the next customer on the car lot, or find the next project, or find the next job that I needed, or what have you. So if you don't ask, it's always no. And when you get enough no's, you're bound to get a yes. So just keep moving till you mess up, right? So I think that's a big key. Yeah, the car business, man, that was so much fun. I had about 25 guys that we worked with, that I worked with, that were, today I could call any one of them up, and that's been, gosh, it's been at least almost 25 years ago. I was in my
Mm.
early 20s when I did it, and I could call any one of those guys up, being a jail in Mexico, and they'd come get me. That's just how they were. We good guys. None of them, all good, God-fearing guys, but everybody was in a different place. Some of them had a little bit of a drinking problem, or their own issues. But for by and large, people give them a hard time. But I was lucky enough to work around a bunch of them that were really good to me. We had a great time, fun. We cut up all the time, and we used to have these contests where we could, you know, we would get somebody on the showroom floor and see if we can get them to crawl completely in the trunk and shut the lid, or crawl up underneath the car. Yeah, have a young man crawl on top of the minivan, jump up and down. We did all kinds of certain things that were just made it fun. And so I really enjoyed that time together with those guys. And like I said, still have their phone numbers to this day, and good group of guys. So yeah, I think that you got to ask. You got to ask for the business if you're in business, and you can talk yourself out of a deal, right? You've heard people say that before. You could certainly go and meet enough friends and not ask for the business, but you could also talk yourself right out of the deal. But it's so important, you gotta ask for the business, plain and simple.
Yeah, I tell people sometimes you got to learn to take yes for an answer. So I have I, I have an example of that. Like so a lot of sales, to your point, will talk themselves out of the business. So I when I was at a grocery wholesaler and I worked with a bunch of independent retailers. So like you've got Tom Thumb and Kroger and all the big guys, and then you've got these smaller regional grocers, and we service them at a company I worked at. And
Mhm.
I was one of the people that we did this thing. It was called the block buy, and so you'd get this group of retailers together, and you'd bring in the CPG companies. So that's Kraft, Unilever, Procter and Gamble, and they would pitch deals. Hey, we want you to
Sure.
offer Bounty towels 2 for $1 on your front page. If you do that, we're willing to give you this price and this much in advertising, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, we would present new items to them that we thought were good. And I had this guy, and he had a bakery, and he made I don't know how he did it because they were thaw and serve, but they tasted like they were fresh baked. They were pastries and cakes
Mhm.
and pies. They were delicious. And so I had this whole thing set up. The grocery business is an early business. Everybody's up at 5 in the morning because the bread deliveries and the wine deliveries and all that shit starts at 5 in the morning. So they're all up early. They have breakfast. So I waited till it was about 10:30 to put him on. And I knew his product would sell itself. So he goes out. Before he goes out, I said his name was Dimitri. I said, Dimitri, if they accept your items, say thank you. We'll circle back on the details and get out. So while he's talking, like he's in the front of this big group and he's making his pitch, and I'm Vanna White, I'm literally serving pastries to people. Like, here,
Yeah.
try his stuff. As soon as they taste it, I see them elbowing each other, like, God, this stuff's great.
Yeah.
And so they're like, yeah, we want to do this. Like 5 minutes into his pitch, they're like, we want to do this. This guy keeps talking. He talked for 15 more minutes to the point like he almost talked himself out of it. If there was a way for me to have tackled him and drug him out of there, like if it wasn't so obvious, I would have done
Yeah.
it. He got off.
Yeah.
I'm like, Dimitri, we talked about this. They said yes
Yeah.
5 minutes in. You should have just tipped your cap and said, we'll be back in
Thank you.
touch with the contracts, man. Get out. When they say yes, take it and get out, man. It's not
That's
rocket
right.
science.
That's right. That's right.
And I've heard no enough. Like, when I hear yes, I'm like, hey, that's the answer we're looking for. I'll take that.
That's what we do. Yep.
Yep.
That's what we do.
So you had talked a little bit too about you had used the term adding value, and that is such a great way to think about your professional career. And it's something we try to get people out of the mindset of trading time for money and think about creating value because it's creating value that actually leads to better income, right? And so I
Yes.
use professional sports or acting a lot because the value that you bring in professional sports and or acting, while it might seem irrelevant, if you're one of the 200 people that can throw a baseball 100 miles an hour, or you're one of the 15 guys that can run a 4.240, or you're one of the whatever, right? 20 people that's over 7 feet tall and is really athletic. You bring a value that other people can't bring, so you can command, you've got pricing power in the market. And if you look at where you started in the construction trade, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about plans because I don't think anybody has any idea how complicated a set of plans is for a job. You've got the electrical takeoffs, you've got the plumbing takeoffs, you've got all the elevations for the site work, you've got the framing. It's like it's super, super complicated. And I think a lot of people don't understand the amount of knowledge and expertise it takes to be able to do takeoffs and accurately project cost and bring the project in on time and on budget based on that set of plans. With that
Yes.
said, talk a little bit about how you got, or I guess not how you got, but some of the lessons you learned going from someone in the ditch working on plumbing to someone running an entire project, because that's a tough progression.
Yes. Well, I can actually, and I'll tie two other points that you were making there as far as adding value to plans and plan creation, plan review, plan design. So two things I learned from an old structural engineer buddy of mine, his dad, and he we were I were taught when this is when I spent time in the design and architecture and design side of things, right? And I was putting together proposals, and we're, kind of talking through value and try to how to price a lot of what a lot of the industry prices or backs into a function of time. How much time did it take me, right? And that's a slippery slope. You've heard these guys on podcasts or Instagrams, and, they talk about, the trade of that offset between dollars and hours. And and he made a really great point to me that really stuck. And he said, look, it didn't take 5 minutes to, example, it didn't take, let's say, 5 hours to stamp a set of documents that, the structural integrity of this building or the design of this building. Here's my stamp. It only took me 5 minutes to put the stamp on there and sign it. All right. If that's not the time it takes, right? That's not what it took. There's time behind that stamp. So the point was, and I'm not articulating it properly, but basically what he was saying is it took me 40 years of
Yep.
experience
Right.
behind the stamp. And the difference there is how much you can't just trade the time. There are guys that do it and they devalue that stamp and they devalue that experience. And they say, well, I can just do it at my kitchen table and I can just stamp sets of drawings. And, if I did 50 a day, then well, that, I could charge X, right? Well, in this case, he was talking about, well, it took, 40 years of experience to get to there. And so how do you value that, right? How do you put a value on the 40 years experience, not the 5 minutes it took to do the stamp? And then that kind of ties into, just because I make it look easy doesn't mean it is.
Bingo.
Right, right. So stop with devaluing what you bring to the table. Understand what it is that you possess that the situation needs, whether that's a knowledge of how to help someone buy a car or putting a set of plans together. And so, yeah, flipping over to kind of what it takes to put a set of documents together. I've gotten the opportunity recently to work on a historical building. This is a building, it's actually a school in downtown Dallas. And it was built in, the largest portion of it was built in 1915. So, 80, 90-year-old building that the original set of documents, original plans, the blueprints of this building were, 20 sheets, 20 individual sheets. And, for most of us in the industry today, that's mind blowing. That renovation that we're working on now has two volumes of plans to the tune
Right.
of, 300 sheets per volume, and so, and there's a reason for that. And I've certainly pinpointed that to this. And, people can argue all they want, but it really comes down to communication, right? What you're saying when you put a set of documents together is you're building a story. You're saying this is how we want the building to look, and how it's supposed to be built, and the components and the scope that goes into achieving that. Contractually, our architects and engineers, the documents, the blueprints, the drawings portion is complementary, excuse me, to the narrative in the project manual. So if you think about it, there's the big rollout blueprints that everyone, those are plan sets, right? Those are just the illustrations, right, of what is being articulated in a narrative in the volume of what we call a project manual or spec book. You hear, well, what do the specs say? They usually are the gospel, right? And the intent of a set of plans is to articulate or to communicate to the construction team what needs to be built. And so the reason there's 600 pages on today's building versus the 60 it took, let's say, to originally build it, was because it was usually one guy, right? The word architect is Greek for master builder. And a lot of people don't know that, but architects back in the day, even, back in, the Pantheon, one of the oldest buildings in the world, had an architect. And that architect was not only the designer, but he was the builder. He actually constructed it with a team. He was also the engineer. And so all of those people were under one guy. And that kind of nods or gives a nod to what I do today, and that's owner's representation or construction manager, is that really there needs to be one person that can help orchestrate all of that, where that was the way it was done in the old days. And today it's so compartmentalized, it's so specialized. I was listening to a guy talk about AI and how that was going to impact our industries, period, all over for everyone. The economy, the way that the world is going to turn with AI is going to be more generalized. The value that we can bring to our respective industries is what you can do from a general standpoint. The general knowledge. There's so much of it that's going to be taken over by what AI is going to be bringing to the table. Not to get into that conversation, but when you build a set of documents, you're communicating, and when you're communicating a story that then is so convoluted between, the whole telephone theory of, well, did this guy understand how to read it, and did this guy understand, how it all's supposed to come together? And a good set of documents on the construction side of things. Most contractors will be like, well, an architect and a structural engineer, they rarely ever talk to each other. And so when those two guys don't talk, then those two portions of the project aren't communicating and they're not coordinated, right? And so there's all of these people have to it's like a symphony. You got to all bring in everybody in the right form, and they bring, all of them have value that they bring to the table. And you get to, in my role, you get to sort of exploit all of those skill sets, and put them all together in a way that makes that project go smoother. And so, yeah, plans, they're difficult, and they're convoluted because of so many people that have to, number one, put them together, because there's not one guy that knows it all in this business for sure. And so you have to rely on their expertise and the value that everyone can bring to that. So many times we're looking at designers, or looking for designers to know exactly how a wall is supposed to be constructed, when really his role is just to make it look pretty, and the designer can really make some beautiful architecture. But he needs your help, structural engineer, to make sure, and contractor, he needs your help to say, this is how it can go together and to achieve that design. And so I would love to get back to a day where we're building, true architecture, where we're building things that are beautiful again, rather than these, institutional square gray boxes all over the world. Uh, there's my wife and I were privileged enough to visit Italy for our 30th anniversary, and we talk about that trip all the time and can't wait to get back. It was really an enjoyable trip. But one of the things we wanted to do is look at, obviously, some of the architecture, and obviously those buildings are, they've stood the test of time, and it's remarkable to think, the types and teams of people that had to be orchestrated to put some of that stuff together, the Colosseum, the Pantheon, some of the structures that are built, basically with horse and buggy and slave labor to block and tackle, and been put to put pulleys in such a way to achieve that grandiose of a building it's remarkable. We can barely sometimes put a straight wall together. I'm cursed with walking around. Yeah, I'm cursed with walking around buildings and walking through parking lots, and just seeing all of the things that we've got to point out. Let's say in a punch list, or point out as a whoops, we got to come back and fix this. So it's a bit of a curse to walk around and see some of the types of workmanship and craftsmanship that is lackluster at best these days. So anyway, I think people would argue that, well, we just don't have the time that they had. Some of those buildings took, hundreds of years in some cases to build, where we have to do it, or, we don't get the opportunity to do high design or high value or high craftsmanship, because, well, we just can't afford for it to take that long. We've got to get to market. We've got to get open. We've got to move. And so, the age old three items, right? You can have it good, you can have it cheap, or you can have it fast. You get to pick two.
That's right. I can deliver two. Anyone that says they can deliver three is lying to you.
Yeah, yeah.
100%. So, interesting note on Italy. I'm a big Jeopardy fan. I watch Jeopardy all the time, and it was actually a Final Jeopardy question, which I got correct. Italy has more heritage sites than any other country in the world. It's over 200 that have been designated as historical heritage sites
Hmm.
because of the things you talked about. So, I haven't been yet. It's on my wife and I's list. Super interesting to hear you talk about it, especially someone from a construction background. Like I think about the aqueduct. Like
Oh
there's
yeah,
nothing more. There's no force more destructive on the face of the earth than water. And you think about
yeah,
the aqueduct still standing thousands of years later, when all
yeah,
it does is runs water. It's wild what they were
yeah.
able to accomplish back in the day.
Sure is. Yeah, yeah. It was
Yep.
incredible. The food that they produce there is much different. The architecture, the food, the culture, the people, everything. We just really enjoyed it. We got the opportunity to go sort of. Well, we went 10 days in Rome, 10 days in Tuscany, and then down to we spent one of those days down the coast in a boat, no, down the Amalfi Coast, and it was just picturesque. In fact, you really just can't believe how beautiful it is, and that has a lot to do, like I said, with how they built things then and in what we do now. Cookie cutter type stamped out houses that we live in to the big square gray boxes, and so. I'm a little bit ashamed to be in that industry or be in the construction industry and not get the opportunity to really build something grandiose and beautiful that'll stand the test of time. I mean, they're out there. There's people that are building them, but nothing like they used to. It's sad to me. Maybe we'll get back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you had also talked a little bit about your family. And it sounds like you dove in head first, like right out of college. Sounds like you got married, had a daughter, and then you now fast forward here 30 plus years later, you've built a pretty nice life for yourself. Didn't start out that way based on what you talked about. How did you navigate? And then and you're building a career at the same time. How did you manage? How do you manage all that stuff? How do you either compartmentalize that or how do you prioritize that? And I'm certain that we'll talk about religion at some point in this conversation, which is actually next on my list. But just talk a little bit about that. Like that's a hard thing to do. Like I did it with boys, you did it with girls, but I mean the gender and what the important thing is there. Like building all that stuff is rough.
Yeah, I guess. Man, it certainly we weren't meant to be alone, right? And so it takes a team, takes a village, as they say. So I've got an incredible wife. Like I said, of almost 32 years. Our oldest will be 30 this weekend. But we didn't do it right. My wife and I were literally talking about this the other day about what yesterday at lunch we were talking about what our children will take away from the way we raised them, the values that we tried to instill. And the number one thing I can tell you is that we screwed it all up. We did not do it correctly, and they're going to be okay, right? And that's the biggest takeaway for me is none of us are perfect. Only one guy was, and we're going to bump our head. We're going to make mistakes. But it's how you come out of those, like before we just talked about, how you come out of those mistakes and what is the next best thing that you can do? What is the next best step that you can take? And I think that's served me well. Like I said, you got to have a team. You got to have so a backup. We couldn't. She when I was young and ignorant and still she would allow me some latitude. She supported me through trying to find myself and my job, and through all the different paychecks that she had to figure out how to stretch. You know, the ramen noodle or the tuna helper or whatever we were eating on it. We had to figure out how to make it work, and that's that has a lot. I give her a lot of that credit. She was able to give me the grace, give me some room to figure myself and my head out, and get out of my own way to move things forward. And so I certainly think that she was a large part of that. I mentioned that we divorced, we separated and then remarried after our after a spell. I went off to school and came back, and I just I didn't want another man raising my daughter, and I needed to man up and make that decision to do my part and to do what I was put on this earth to do. And if nothing else, if I couldn't figure nothing else, I knew that I was at least supposed to be a little girl's daddy. And so I put on pulled my pants up and got to work and got to work on me, got to work on my relationship with my wife, or who I wanted to be my wife again. And we just found a way around some of those. I tell you, I've told this to many people. In fact, I was talking to a guy not too long ago, and I asked, and people kind of laugh at me, but I got to give credit where credit was due. And Will Smith, I got this from Will Smith early on. This was several years ago when we were struggling, trying to figure out, do we get a divorce? Do we stay? Do we come back together? And what he said was, you got to take the D word out of your vocabulary. And that hit me right between the eyes, because I had already been divorced, and I realized that, that doesn't answer or, fix anything. You still have responsibilities. You still have, so if you take the D word, if you take the divorce word, if that's not an option, well, guess what? You got to figure it out. And when you're left with limited of ways to fight, right? What we were fighting over didn't seem to matter anymore. When you knew, look, this is going to go to either us just being aggravated for 2 or 3 days, or we just get over it and move on. And so there was a lot of that just had to happen, because, well, get out of your own way, get out of your own head, get out of your selfish, prideful way, and start living for somebody else rather than yourself. Um, One of the things on my website at Jonathan Partners is if we help enough people get what they want, we'll have everything we ever needed. And that kind of goes back to my marriage. And that was, if I empty myself and allow her to do 100%, because it's not 50-50, right? People think, well, let's just, you do 50%, I'll do 50%. That's not marriage. I have learned that. Marriage is 100%. You have to give 100% every single day. And when you have that timeline, all right. I heard this is another good one. They give a score, right? When you walk in the door, hey, I'm a 20 today. You're gonna have to be the 80, or I'm a 60. You're gonna have to be the 40. And they leaned on each other, right? They said, hey, I can only meet you at 20% today. Right now, I just got beat to death at work, and I just don't have it in me. I don't have any gas. And so that's why you got to have that 100%, is to be able and ready to pick up the ball and run with it when she can. And that could mean changing diapers, could mean making dinner, could mean all of it. Could be making making the dinner, changing the diapers, cleaning the house, and let her, take to the bed for whatever reason. She just doesn't feel like it. She's sick for whatever reason. And then know that she's going to pick up when you're down, right? And it's a give and take. So for sure, those are just little nuggets I've learned along the way. And like I said, I give most of the credit to her. She's just been a fighter and refused to say no. And we just kept moving together systematically and taking that next best step.
Love it. Such such good commentary in there. I hope everybody like just go play that again. Like there's a lot that Nathan just said in there that you can really take a lot away from. I love the it's not 50-50 part. We actually did a podcast episode on that a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, really?
That
Yeah.
I guess a couple of things. One, and this is just like my opinion, and my wife and I've been married for 32 years as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Um,
Congratulations. I
yeah,
know what it's
thank you. You too.
there. So,
um, she's not my best friend. She's my wife. And I hear a lot of people say I married my best friend. I,
yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I can't be a best friend to a woman because I don't have those experiences. Like I don't know what it's like.
That's right.
And she has female friends, and that's good. I encourage it. She'll a
100%.
couple times a year go do a girl trip where like she's surrounded by testosterone and has been for 30 years because we had boys. And
Yep.
so like get away and go do your thing. And I have male friends that I go to as well. But there's been different points in our marriage. I had a pretty serious health issue with my heart last month, and I was
Ooh.
down for a couple of weeks. Like, I mean, ICU, that type of thing.
Oh,
She
wow.
had to do everything because that's just where I was. She was in a really bad car accident in what was that, 2005, I think it was, and got thrown out of a car. Um,
Wow.
and she had three cracked vertebrae, compression fractures in vertebrae in her back. So look, it was me for 6 weeks, and it's funny because I still remember my kids were in the car at the time,
Oh,
and
wow.
she was driving straight, and somebody took a left turn. It was like a 2-lane country highway. You've got a lot of those in Texas. We had them in New Hampshire when I lived there. She's going straight. Somebody took a left into the side of her car, like just in the left turn lane, never saw her and just turned left into her car while she was going 60 miles an hour and got thrown out. I got a call. This was back in the dial up days. I was on the internet. My neighbor came over and said, "Hey, Sherry was in a really bad car accident. You need to get down into town," because we lived kind of out in the sticks. And
Mm.
I drove past the accident site. So there's my family's car laying on its top. It had
Wow.
clearly rolled over several times. And I
Ooh.
got to the emergency room and saw my three sons all sitting on one bed, and they were all okay, which was
Oh,
great. They
good.
were all buckled
Yeah.
in, and so even with all the car flipping over and stuff, like one of them had a little scratch on his head or something. And then they were good. The nurses were taking care of them, so I went around the corner and saw my wife, and she did not look good. She didn't have any outward injuries, but she was white as a sheet and was shaking kind of uncontrollably. And she said, "It wasn't my fault." And I said, "I don't care. I don't
Right.
care at all. Like, I
Right.
want you to live. All I care is that I want you to live.
Yeah.
I don't give a
Wow.
shit if you're crippled. I don't care. Just live.
Wow.
Just
Sure.
tell me you're going to live." That was all
Yeah.
I cared about
Wow.
in that moment. So there's times where one has to carry a heavier load than the other. But I agree with you. It's always got to equal 100%. You got to give it collectively everything you've got at that particular moment in time. And look, there's times where you're both hitting on all cylinders. It's pretty good. And then
Sure.
there's times where, everybody's misfiring and the thing's sputtering along. And you're like, oh, this is like that jalopy in the Archie comics that I used to read when I was a kid, man. I don't know how much more we can nurse this thing down the road
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure.
So, yeah, but I look, I know exactly what you're talking about. And we've always taken that. It's funny you mentioned that about divorce because we've always taken that approach. We've always said, and this is going to sound bad, but I'm going to say it anyways because it's true. We've always said there's one way out of the marriage, and we said it the day we got married. Like this is till death do us part. Like
Yes.
that's the way out.
Yeah.
And
My wife likes to remind me that she likes to remind me that mine can be arranged. Yeah.
we
Yes.
say
Death
the
to his
same thing.
part, and
Yeah.
yours can be arranged.
We say the same thing at our house. We didn't say how. We just said that's the only way out.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
But it takes
Jeez.
that level of commitment. And I think we were fortunate, and it sounds like you guys might have been as well. We were really young when we met and got married. So we were 21 and 19 when we got married, and we were 22 and 20 when we had our first child. And so we didn't know any better. We went from being kids to being adults. And so, like, we've grown up and gone through all those stages of life together, but we've always placed our relationship in the at the center of it and said, "Hey, if this is right, we can handle all the rest of it. Like whatever
Sure.
else comes after or comes at us, we can handle it." And it's interesting
100%.
because my wife is actually she's not practicing, but she has a lot of faith in God, and
Mhm.
I am not that way. But you've referenced it a couple times in the conversation here, and I like we talked about in our conversation last week. I'm very respectful, and I see the value in religion. For whatever reason, it has not struck me the same way it struck other people. But I'd
Sure.
love to hear you talk about because some of our listeners I'm certain probably feel that way. And I'd love to hear from someone that it's a central part of their life. How has that impacted as you've worked through all these challenges? That look, all of us have challenges. Everybody's life has challenges. There's just different challenges based on your life. But
Sure.
how did you come to religion being a central part of your life, and how has it helped you as you've worked through these things?
Wow. Well, thank you for that, giving me an opportunity to give you what you just asked me for is my testimony
Yes.
and how I came to faith. And so, um, uh, it is, I grew up in a family that was, I think they call it agnostic. They knew that there was God, that there was a God or could be a God, and sort of, we did the Easter, Christmas, services. My grandfather was Greek Orthodox, whatever that meant. I would share services with my aunt. She would take us. She was Church of Christ, and you had all these denominations. And I just early on in my life with my wife and all, and even young kids, it wasn't until it wasn't really. I just felt like it was sort of like it was religious, right? And I never really understood anybody that needed to go to church. It didn't make any sense to me. Why do you need to go? If you believe in God, God's with you. You can pray right now if you want to pray. So I just had this sort of different view in my mind, at least I thought, about that was what religion or Christianity or just following God was about until it wasn't until I was oddly enough 33 years old. I met or had a friend, a family member, Casey Tolbert. He's no longer with us anymore. He came to me and we just had a conversation. Actually invited me to a car show, believe it or not, at his church that they were having. And so I went, and it was called Rock Point. Um, they played rock and roll music, and they played it loud. And I was indifferent. The music was good. It was done by good quality musicians, and I could recognize that. And the pastor was roughly my age, maybe a few years older. And I started listening, and I just started to think, um, he just said, "Come and just check it out. Come and just see." And the first thing that out of their mouths were, "Look, we're a church for guys that don't go to church." And so it made it real comfortable for me to understand kind of where they were coming from. And then they just started laying out the Bible. And then there was a call, and he had the pastor had basically said, "Hey, we're going to do baptism. Is this something that?" And I early on had gone to private school when I was in fourth grade, and I remember even then accepting Christ into my, but I didn't really understand what it meant. And so my walk was a little different, I think maybe than some, and maybe some can see some parallels, but I just didn't. It just didn't hit me like I guess maybe you're talking about. Where it was just until I started having children, and I started thinking, well, what example am I leaving them? What am I showing them or not showing them? But it wasn't a real conviction until Casey and I had a conversation. Money was always an issue. It was like they're always going to be asking me for money. I didn't really think that was cool. I was like, my what I built was mine, and I'm going to keep it, and you're just going to run off with it. And so two things really struck me. One, is when I went to church and I started to really dig in, I met and found out who Paul was. You'd always heard Paul. Well, Paul was killing Christians. Paul was a heathen. I mean, he wasn't a heathen. He understood Mosaic law, and he understood how to be religious, but he really didn't understand what Christ was trying to do until he was hit over the head with blindness on the walk to Emmaus, and on the road he meets Christ. And I kind of had a parallel story where I just was going the wrong way. I was doing the wrong things. I was thinking the wrong way, and and then the other thing was, the money part. They kept saying, "Look, if you need if you need a little something to get you through the week, those boxes that we're asking you to give to are there for you. So take out what you need and get through the next week. And I just found that amount of faith in just us as heathens and sinners, refreshing in the sense that he doesn't they're not hoarding over that bowl of or box of money that people are giving in. If you need something, pull that out. That's God's money. And then slowly but surely started to learn more and more about the gospel and understanding not of why I was saved and why my sin was forgiven and given the opportunity um, to really reflect and show my children and my wife what a godly man can be was really I say I got in a bunch of trouble and I did. I'd been in jail for fighting and drinking and doing all of the things, but I hadn't killed anybody. I didn't think. Then I started realizing that sin is sin. It's all the same in God's eyes. And the way Jesus says is all sin is forgiven. And that meant all the things that I had been doing or were gonna do was forgiven. And I thought there was some validity in that, especially when I started to see myself in Paul, seeing myself that, why was I good enough? And the fact that it wasn't just me and I couldn't earn myself any additional salvation. It was given to me freely. Um, and I found that the more and more, my wife to this day, we try to study the Bible in the mornings together. We pray together. That is something that has, changed my walk even more so on a daily basis. That I wouldn't have put value on that before, and it's still difficult today to pray out loud audibly. But I can't tell you how much a difference it's made in our relationship, in my life and in hers. And so my walk is continuing. I fail every single day. I fall short every single day, and but I have hope, and my hope lies in Jesus Christ as my Savior. And I've lost family that didn't believe, and that to me is why I continue to try to when given the opportunity, certainly tell people about my Jesus. And I'm thankful every day that he gives me a date on this earth to move forward and uh, given an opportunity to spread the word to someone else and hopefully they turn to Jesus. And I don't think it takes sometimes people just I don't think it takes a 2x4 over the head. I took that for me, but I think once people give it a chance to understand truly what it is, and take the religious pieces out of it. I had a guy, a good friend of mine, he called it, we was in a men's Bible study, and he called it preferences. What kind of music they have, how you're supposed to dress, or what kind of building that you're in. And, these are all preferences. And that is, none of that's biblical. None of that's in the Bible. I like apologetics. I don't know if you know what apologetics are, but that's the study of theology and the study of scientifically and archaeologically, historically, factual. The Dead Sea Scrolls was probably the most famous one, but lately they've been finding things that start to piece the Bible together. All religions recognize Jesus. All religions believe that he walked this earth. And Christianity is the only one that says he's the one true God. And so it is where I've put my faith, and I haven't looked back. And I just thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about it. I don't think we do it enough. I think that there are other religions that people should talk about and should hear. And certainly I think I think it's good to continue to have those conversations. So creating a platform for people to do so is great. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for sharing that. And I just a couple of things. One, I just want everyone to kind of take a look here. Uh, I doubt anyone's ever called Nathan soft. No one's ever called me soft. I think we're both pretty manly men. He played football and did rodeo and works in construction, right? So that those things don't preclude you, and they should not preclude you from having these kinds of conversations and these kinds of exchanges, because Nathan just shared something that's deeply important to him and deeply personal to him. And I really respect that and appreciate you doing it on our podcast. And I would also note, we don't necessarily see that from the same point of view. I don't want to say we don't see it the same way, because I absolutely accept what you just said and appreciate what you just said wholeheartedly. I might think about it differently. I might see it differently, but I have a ton of respect for you sharing that with me and with all of our listeners. And so I think it's really important for people to understand these are the kind of things that add value to your life. These are the kind of things that bring depth and meaning to your life. So if you're searching for something or you're not sure, go back and listen to what Nathan just said again, because I think it was really, really powerful, and just really, really appreciate you sharing that with our listeners. So thank you.
Well, you bet. Absolutely. And it's not my role or any other Christian's role to convince or change hearts, and it is to just share. And you've given me that opportunity to do so. And that's all we're asked to do, is to go and make disciples and share the word with others. It's up to God to convict hearts and to change minds. And that, I think, when you talked about just strength and godliness, um, uh, Jesus wasn't weak. I used to think that too. Yeah, I used to think it was kind of soft, candy. Yeah, no, I mean he was meek, and meekness is strength under control, right? And so it's being meek is one thing. Being weak is a different deal. He certainly wasn't weak. To bear the burden and the sin and the torture that went into that. And there's not a depiction. There's some that show it, but no one's come close to even trying to depict what Jesus went through on the cross for us. And so it's important, I think, to recognize that people have been hurt by the church. People have been hurt by other Christians. It's important to recognize that this is a fallen world, and we're all going to fall short. And that's what we say. Everyone on this side of heaven is a sinner, and we all sin, and no sin is bigger than the next sin. It's just all forgiven by one guy, and when you understand that, it opens up a world. Here's a guy that's wanting the best for you, right? There's prosperity gospel out there, and people will shake their finger at it. But God wants the very best for you. And if he's the creator of this world, and if he's the creator of all the things that we can put our finger on and see in this world, um, and if he's able to do that, what do you think he can do with my finances? He thinks people say, well, you gotta give your money. I I was asked to give cheeringly for my own good. And I didn't mention that, but I want to. And then if it's okay, I'd like to say that there were some things there that my dad told me. He goes, "Hey, son, he just says you have to give. What they do with it afterwards is on them, right? If you do your part, you're reaping the reward of that, and the reward is not necessarily monetarily. Another way people look at that is, would you rather live on 90% of blessed money or 100% of cursed money?
Mm.
And if you're just taking the tithing thing, sometimes that might hit a chord with somebody. And I'm like, oh yeah. Well, my goal today financially is to live on the 10 and give away the 90. And people think, well, that's kind of crazy. Why would you do that? Well, I mean, number one, it's biblical. Number two, if I can survive on 10% of $100 million a year and give away the other, What's wrong with that, right? How much do I need to live on? How much do I need to retire on? And I can't take it with me, right? So I think from a finance standpoint, from a business standpoint, it makes all the business sense in the world if you got the creator of the world and universe able to bless you in ways that you can't even imagine. We can't even imagine it. So how much better do you think he's got a life for you, planned for you than you can't even imagine? So I've screwed it up enough. I don't need I don't I'm okay with relying on him to help me.
Love
So
it.
anyway,
Yeah. And
yeah,
look, you've talked about it multiple times, and I appreciate you directly tying it to your faith, but helping other people, right? And
sure,
so when you think about that, even if you're just going to be selfish and say, hey, what is the best chance I have at creating the life I want for just me? Let's just
right,
say that you're egocentric and selfish, and only thing you care about is the best possible outcome for you. I don't know anybody, and I mean anybody, and I actually know a couple and have worked with a couple of billionaires. And I don't know anybody who has not built true wealth for themselves by solving other people's problems or making other people's lives better.
better,
So
sure,
even if you're motivated entirely intrinsically, the best shot you've got at being successful is to solve other people's problems and make other people's lives easier. And you've referenced that a couple of times, and I really appreciate you being able to tie it directly to your faith because I think that's important. And I just want to make sure our listeners make that connection and hear that loud and clear. So,
sure,
yep.
absolutely.
So, do your daughters share your faith?
They do. They are probably bigger faith warriors than I am. Their faith is, well, I would say their walk is further along maybe than mine, in the sense that um, we didn't force it on them. We presented it. We made it available to them. No one was forced to go to church or to they had my oldest had a really good youth pastor um, that made it fun, I think, and made it interesting for them to at least engage. And so they all have a well-rounded understanding of the Bible and what it says on their own fruition. And I wish I could say that it was because they saw me in the Word and they saw what I was doing, and that's not the case. Let me be clear. It was my daughters were old enough. Well, they started their walk well before I was, in the Word on a daily basis. You hear people, like it's so difficult to read, and it is, and for good reason. And so it takes diligently, applying yourself. I'm ADHD and WD-40 and all the things, and so it's difficult for me to sit down. I listen to it, but yeah, no, their faith is strong. It says to teach them in the way they should go, and they'll always return. And so that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, but I can't take any credit for it, whatever. They have made that decision on their own, and they've all been baptized. They've all, an outward, confession of an inward covenant, and so they're all believers and have a walk. Um, but yeah, I mean, we made it available to them, but they made their own choices. So
Love that. And look, that's one of the things I think I appreciate and respect the most about just your sharing all this with the audience is none of this felt like a sales pitch. This was you relating your own personal experiences and your own personal relationship with your religion. And I think that's extremely powerful. I think that's extremely, um, uh, I think we're very lucky to have had you share that with us, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah,
well,
it's good stuff.
yeah, I
Good
appreciate it.
stuff. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm out of questions. I feel like we covered a wide range of things, but is there anything we haven't talked about or anything that you wanted to talk to our audience about or share that I haven't asked you about yet? Floor is yours, my friend.
Well, yeah, no, it's been a great conversation. Thanks for letting me babble along. You kind of hit on a few of the high points. You're trying to create an environment where people can come and learn something. Maybe they take a nugget or two. I've been to countless seminars and conferences, and and it's never all encompassing and aha moments and those types of things. But yeah, listen, if there's a nugget or two that you or I could pass along to the next generation, I feel like that's what we all should be doing, is getting out there, talking face to face. This is face to face. We're in different parts of the country, but nonetheless, I think this is an opportunity, an outlet where people can start to recognize that, by and large, we're all human beings, and by and large, we can all appreciate something from each other and add value to each other's lives. And whatever walks of life, I'm always interested in learning new things, and so I appreciate you creating a platform where that happens. You'd mentioned in our discussion before about how young men and young women these days they're being brought out lied to about what truth is. And I find truth in the holy word of God, and Jesus spoke that into existence, and it gives us the ability to say this is absolute truth. And when people conflict that, or they get rolled up in culture that says that's been their playbook all along, is to try to create division and create ways to sow uncertainty in our lives, and keep us separate. I think we can come together more, find things to do together that is in person. As corny as it may sound, and by the way, people eat corn. Getting together and visiting. I'm from the South. I'm from the country. I mean, you ought to visit more. Just get to visit it, and that's what we've done here. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate the time we've spent together, and we should do it again. And I wish you and your listeners the best. And this has been great. So if they can all take a nugget away, then that's a good thing.
All right. So, one, I'm not even going to, you did such a great job recapping that. I'm not even going to try, but you did beat me to the punch because I was going to ask you if we could do a follow up session somewhere down the road or make this a more regular thing. So, we'll just
Absolutely.
stay in touch. And when it makes sense, we can do it again because I truly, truly enjoyed our conversation. And I think there was a lot of value here for people to listen to. And so, we're going to do it again. That's what it boils down to.
Sounds good. I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nathan. Really, really appreciate it. Hope everyone enjoyed that. And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Thanks. All right, guys. So, what a great conversation we just had with Nathan. So, just to recap, from our perspective, some of the high points, he walked us through his history from a family of six, single mother, went through college or started college on a football scholarship. That went away when the school changed divisions. Talked about his relationship with his wife and raising his three daughters, his progression in the construction industry, and then shared, I thought, what was some great, great insights into his faith, how he got into his faith, why he lives his life by those values, and how he sees the value there for other people in a very, very kind of straightforward basis from his perspective, not trying to persuade anyone, but making sure everyone understood what his values were. So couldn't have been a better guest. We will definitely have a follow up session with Nathan, and just couldn't appreciate more him spending that time with us today. Super super valuable, and we're lucky to have been able to participate in it. So. James puts it up over here every day. Don't forget to head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. All of our social media links are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday that you can subscribe to on our website, and would love it if you're able to like, comment, subscribe. It's super helpful for us to get the podcast out in front of more people and get more people kind of thinking about how they can take control of their lives and really build the life for themselves that they want. So, thanks again for joining us, guys. Super interesting conversation. Hope you enjoyed it as well. And we will see you on the next episode.